Hey, Coach Field here with B3rd Athletics. And I recently had the opportunity to sit down with a former player of mine, an amazing young man who is currently striving to be third in college athletics. And so I'm excited to bring you a podcast with Caedmon Parker. He is currently a junior for the TCU baseball program. And we went through our normal stuff. He's going to address athletes, coaches, and parents. And so I hope and pray that you get a ton out of this podcast. And if you do enjoy it, please subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and share with your friends. Thanks. God bless. So, Caedmon, take a little bit of time. Tell us a little bit about you. And I guess if you want to, I'll give you permission. Feel free to share a story about me if you like, as far as me being a terrible coach. Ready, go.
Uh, all right. So yeah, like Coach Field mentioned, my name's Caden Parker, and I went to the Woodlands Christian Academy starting in seventh grade all the way through, and now I'm at TCU. My mom works there, so I was spending a ton of time, up at school, um, probably just hanging out doing nothing when I could have been, getting better at something with all the resources that school has. But no, it was always sports growing up for me. I was always, encouraged to play them, have fun, but also get better and grow. More as a human than an athlete in that sense. Yeah, like Coach Field said, I played basketball for him for 3 years. My senior year, decided not to play to try to focus a little bit more on baseball, and I'm not going to say I regret it or don't regret it, but it's how it went, and we're here now. So
We were
play
also
baseball.
just to be fair to you, Caedmon, we were also terrified as your coaches at that time. Caedmon's being humble, which is amazing. That's the type of kid he is. But he had an opportunity to be drafted out of high school, and Caedmon really plays sports one way, and that is just all out. One of my favorite plays in my coaching career is we were playing in a state championship game, Caedmon's junior year, and right before half, he makes this diving play on the floor for a loose ball. It just really kind of set the tone for us the rest of the game. And so, really, honestly, going into his senior year, I would have loved to seen him play because he was unbelievable on the football field that year. He was amazing to watch on the mound as a pitcher. I know he would have done great things in basketball, but I was slightly terrified of you taking a charge or diving on the floor. And maybe that's not the best way to go about things, but I think God works in the way that He's supposed to work. So I wanted to protect you from that because I definitely was nervous as well about you playing basketball your senior year. Even though I'm pretty sure had you, we would have seen you go baseline and dunk on somebody that year. But we'll just have to keep that in the back of our mind and wonder if it would have happened.
Yeah, it's it's funny that you bring up that story of junior year in the state championship because I still have a dent in my right elbow from that, and I was always scared that somehow that would come back to bite me when it comes to throwing. I had Tommy John, and that was the UCL, the ulnar collateral ligament, not bone as much. But yeah, that dent is still in my elbow from laying out on the floor. But no, it was fun. I knew that baseball was the one I wanted to take the most serious, but at the same time, I love playing sports, and to this day, I still miss playing football, still miss playing basketball, and we'll occasionally go over to the rec center and shoot around a little bit or throw the football at the baseball field. Um, just trying to stay athletic with all of it, but no, it would have been a fun senior year for sure.
What do you think drew you to sports as a young kid? I mean, was it parent driven? I mean, not like they were like sitting there telling you you have to play, but I mean, you always seem to be the type of young man growing up where if you could find an opportunity to compete, you were going to do it. And so, when do you feel like looking back, you really fell in love with sports and why?
I don't know. I feel like the earliest memory, I kind of have in my head is either with a bat or with a ball. At a young age, 2 years old, it's not like you're taking it serious and trying to get the right mechanics or anything like that. But it was always sports was just always my favorite thing to do. And whether it was soccer in kindergarten or flag football in first grade or basketball on a 6 foot goal when I was 3 years old, like whatever it may have been, like it was always just sports for me. And when I started playing, select baseball at 7, 8 years old, it was just it was just fun, and I think that's the beauty of it for me is just sports have always been fun. They've never been a game or a business, And, the older I've gotten, the more I've realized that it can turn into that if you allow yourself to go there. Um, but, my parents they're phenomenal at, being loving, but also encouraging and being able to shape and mold me the way they have. Um, I wouldn't be playing baseball at TCU or being at this great university without the way they have shaped and molded me. And sports have kind of just been everything for me. Things get stressful. Everybody goes through, tough stuff, rough patches in their life. And for me, it was always easy to find some refuge in either watching sports or just playing a sport casually just to get my mind off of, things that have happened, in this world. So I don't think it was necessarily a choice or driven by anything other than the fact that, I just loved being outside, being with, teammates or buddies and just having fun and being competitive.
So one of the concepts that I don't know, in my last couple of interviews, I interviewed a track coach from Mount St. Mary's. I also interviewed a head tennis coach at Belmont Abbey, and one of the common denominators between both of them that has really left my head spinning is they talk about in the recruiting process with athletes, they are looking for young men and women that have a pursuit of excellence mentality. And so I asked them to break that apart. I am continuing to do research that on that, but this pursuit of excellence versus recreation. God wants us to have both in our life. A recreation opportunity, leisure, where we get out and we play with our friends. I know that you love to play golf, but that would be a recreational activity for you versus the pursuit of excellence that you've got with baseball. And so I'm kind of curious, at what point did you know, like, man, I think this baseball thing for me is a pursuit of excellence and not no longer just recreation. Yes, there's still opportunities to have fun and to compete with my friends, but I definitely feel like God is using this gift and this talent that he's given me to shape me into being the person he wants me to be. And so to honor that, I need to pursue it with excellence so that he can properly use it. Like, how old were you and when did you really know, like, hey, this could be it for me? This baseball thing seems different than everything else.
I mean, the best way to put it for me is I was always good at it. I was always really good at it. And I knew that, but it was never trying to let people know that I was the best there was, or it was never from an early age, oh, I can go play college or I can go play. It was always just fun, but I was naturally gifted at it. And for me, it was, sophomore, junior year of high school when I sprouted from 5'6", 5'7", all the way to 6'4". And it was kind of in those 2 years that I'd gone a little bit away from playing shortstop and hitting, and more taking, the new height I had to the mound and working on mechanically that. And it was never, serious going to lessons or getting like a specific pitching coach or grinding certain drills or anything like that. It was kind of just you do things enough, you get better at it.
Mm.
And it was pitching, and it was, junior year had started to get recruited a little bit. And that was kind of whenever I realized that, okay, like college baseball is a for sure thing. And it wasn't like, oh, TCU was there right away. It was smaller schools and it was just interest. But I knew from the first school that it was a small school, but it was a guaranteed that I could play college baseball if I wanted to. And that was where God was going to lead me in my life. Um, and then, sure enough, things can continue to get better, for me on the field. Um, and going into junior year, had a couple of good outings. And I remember that the outing right before COVID hit, we were playing in a tournament in New Caney, and Texas A&M was there. I never wanted to go to Texas A&M. I don't lie. I never wanted to play for them. But that was
I'm
the first time
shaking
I
my
ever.
head because, I mean, come on, man. Like, that's my school. You just had to bring it up. But I digress. Continue. Okay. Go
It's
ahead.
never been something for me. I never wanted to be an Aggie, but it was the first time that I realized, like, hey, like a big school's here, and I saw that because they come early, they come warm ups, they see everything because it's not about just what you do in the game. It's about how you prepare. They want to see little things that they look for, and saw them early, and I in my head knew that I psyched myself out, and I was like, okay, this is it. You got to do good because if you do well, they talk to other people, more people come, more and more success will lead from this. Sure enough, had a really, really bad day on the mound. And that was, I think, the day or two before we had left for our Beyond the Walls trip. and we were in Disney. They announced COVID. We all, went home, and they announced the baseball season was over. And I remember just like the gut wrenching feeling that, baseball season was over, and I was right in the heart of kind of this growth and grind that had been on, hoping to get some of these bigger schools to look out for me. And it was tough. It was really hard those months of COVID where you couldn't play any games, you couldn't go do events or tournaments or anything. And all I wanted to do was get back out there to show that I could pitch well. And sure enough, they opened things back up and summer happened. Um, and again, I think that it's all based on reactions you take from events that happen in your life. So kind of took that as, bad taste in my mouth coming out of that. But the next one, a couple months later, was the first time out since COVID, and things went well, and it all just picked back up, from where it had left off right before COVID started. But those couple months during COVID, um, it was hard knowing that I left kind of like on a bad foot. So
Going back to that experience, do you think, or how would you use that experience to give advice to another young athlete? Because one of the things that I try to coach kids on is, and really parents and coaches, I think all too often we want to try to force the college process. We want to force winning and success. And I try to encourage people that all of those things are God's providence, and we really can't control them. Like, I can't control if I play college sports. I really can't control winning. I can control effort and attitude and coachability and all the things, the characteristics that it takes to win. But winning and getting to the next level is God's providence. So you probably see that now. If you could go back, or you could give advice to a young person that's getting that initial opportunity and they're feeling some of those nerves and like, oh man, a big school's here. I mean, I would almost imagine part of your struggle that day is that you wanted it so bad that it got in the way of you just playing the game that you knew how to play. So how would you overcome that now, kind of knowing a little bit more?
no, that's exactly what it was. And the same thing happened. I guess I'll backtrack a little bit. TCU is always where I wanted to be. My dad, is a pastor, as you know, and went to seminary here. We lived on campus, had a lot of really good memories as a kid here at TCU. So it was always somewhere I wanted to come back to, regardless sports or no sports, if it could happen. And the first time, I guess it was my sophomore year, I had just had that growth spurt, just started pitching, and went to an event where TCU was there. And similar thing, psyched myself out because this is the place I wanted to end up.
Mm.
And had again a really bad day. But a few months later, in another event, I learned from it, gotten better. It was like a 6 month time period from the bad one. It was in Florida for another event, and did well in front of them. So I think it just shows the growth of the coaches won't only see you one time. In the recruiting track that you go on, it starts early, it starts late, it's short or long, whatever it may be. Coaches talk, and if you're doing well, there's a good chance like you're going to be seen. If you don't get seen, it's not because you're good and you just nobody talked about you. All the coaches talk, all of the platforms like PBR or PG, whatever it may be that in your area, um, the coaches talk, and if you're good, you're going to be seen. But it's not about being good and performing. You got to go about it in all things, and I haven't been perfect in all of those things by any means. Um, but it's just an understanding that gradual growth will lead to success in whatever area of life that you're looking to be good at.
I think that just drives home a point. I mean, as I was listening to you explain that, you said a couple different times, coaches talk, and that's not just a baseball world thing. That's coaches all across every landscape of sports. It's a pretty tight knit fraternity, and so while that can be a positive because it gives you extra opportunities to overcome some failures, maybe speak a little bit to young athletes who are going through the recruiting process or they desire to be recruited, and just the realization that you kind of have to pursue excellence, or you have to strive to be at your best, especially with the things that you can control each and every day, because coaches talk. And it could be a scenario where a coach watches you play and yeah, you had a bad day, but they really saw a bad attitude. And all of a sudden now they're on their phone with one of their friends. And it's like, man, you're recruiting that kid. So maybe speak to that a little bit. I mean, dive a little deeper into this idea that coaches talk in the recruiting process, and how important is it for a young athlete to really push their focus on quality intangibles, and maybe what are some of those intangibles? I mean, I'll give you an example. Hustle would be an intangible. You know, it's not relative to any singular game. Obviously, you have to be a good skill set at your sport, but those intangibles, I think, are really the separators for a lot of kids. So, could you break that open a little bit more?
I think that what I've learned is, similar to what you're talking about is the coaches talk is it could be one thing. And at least for me, it didn't happen to me personally, but being on a team where I wasn't the only one who was getting recruited. There were a lot of guys that talking to colleges, and it was one game. You had a teammate who rolled over and jogged to first and then slammed his helmet. There was only one coach there watching him. But like I said, coaches talk. And if that one mistake that you make, like slamming your helmet, showing a bad attitude, things like that, yes, you're frustrated because you can do better. But the coaches who are there watching know you can do better, or else they wouldn't be there watching you. They
Yeah.
know that you're better than what you are. So slamming your helmet out of frustration to show them that, oh, I've been working so hard, I shouldn't have, like, whatever it may be, it's things like that that will get you maybe not watched again by that school or a different school, because different every single college in America is looking for a certain set of criteria for the kids they're recruiting. And I think that regardless of whatever school it is, things that are consistent is being a good teammate, having a lot of energy, positive energy, um, and just playing the game the right way. I think that um, being a teammate's the biggest one, at least for me. I've seen it with guys that I know, on different colleges or even high school teams. Like there's guys who aren't the best at baseball, who maybe don't even enjoy baseball, but they just enjoy being around a group of guys and the sport of baseball. So being a
Mhm.
good teammate, encouraging, bringing noise, bringing the juice, whatever you want to call it. Um, coaches see that and they like that. So I think it's less about hitting a certain velo off the mound or hitting a certain amount of doubles or home runs in a game or a season. It's not about the stats as much as it is just the continual growth as a human, as a teammate, but also as a player. Because if they see that if they put in a little bit of money into it now, they're going to see big gains from it, whenever what all the things you've been working at pay off. So I think it's more just about showing them the right things, if that makes sense.
I think it 100% makes sense. So let's move in a little different direction. I mean, now you've been recruited, you've gone through the process, you've made the transition, which I think the transition from high school sports to college sports is one of the most difficult things to go through because, um, there's just a safety net to high school sports, and when you get to college, it's a business, but your transition from one to another is kind of a fairy tale because you're getting recruited, they're telling you how much you love them, and then bam, you sign that letter of intent, you get on campus. Talk to us about some of those changes, that might could potentially help better prepare some athlete that's gonna go through that process in the next, calendar year.
Um, I would say that I kind of had a rough, welcome to college kind of type of moment, and it's
I
not
think
because
everybody does.
everybody's gonna have it. It's just it's inevitable. But there's just this excitement, of signing to your school and being so excited to go play at the next level. Which there's nothing wrong with that. You need to be excited for your accomplishments and all the hard work you've put in to see the fruit of your labor. And but you have to at the same time realize there's 40 other guys who are also excited that they're coming to a spot that you're going to be at, and the coaches know that once you're here, they can do whatever they want. So it's it's exciting to be on campus, starting a new chapter of your life. But at the same time, you got to carry that same work ethic that you had in high school to get yourself recruited, and carry it straight into being at the next level, whether it be in class, whether it be at the field, in the weight room, whatever it may be. You got to keep that same foot to the pedal. And for me, it was Woodlands Christian was great. They were phenomenal. But like you said, there was a little bit of that safety net. And at times, I think maybe because of just connections I had at school or just because of who I was, I don't know what it was. Um, but I was held to a little bit less accountability in times that I look back on wishing I would have been held a little bit more accountable.
Mm,
Um, and coming into college, it was I think I didn't have a great GPA, but it ended up leading to me not being able to start a weekend game against a conference opponent because of my GPA. I was ineligible, and that was a big eye opener for me. And I had plenty of conversations, with the coaches here about how to get better, and you got to realize that this isn't high school anymore, and you're going to be held accountable. There's going to be consequences, um, but it's about excellence is what it comes down to.
Mhm.
So have the excitement going into college, be excited for this new part of your life, and be ready to enjoy it. But at the same time, it's way more work than you think in your head is what you're getting yourself into. It's way more than high school. So I would say just come prepared, ready to grind all day.
How would you, I mean, as a Christian athlete and somebody that grew up in the church and you had great parents and they instilled these amazing values, how would you pair that pursuit of excellence that you have with baseball? And how do you take that pursuit of excellence and apply that to your journey of faith?
Hmm. Um, I mean, excellence is everything you do. And one thing that wasn't clear to me was that I always loved to work and try to be excellent in the things that I cared about and enjoyed. Um, but excellence doesn't come in only the areas you like; it comes in every area of your life, good or bad. So I've never been, I think that I'd say that I'm not good at school because of there's been a lack of effort, and I don't enjoy school, so I've never put a ton of work into it, which is something that I'm having to learn now and get better at now. Um, but with your faith, I mean, it's the same way. It's the way you're a teammate, it's the way you treat others, it's the way you put in work at the things you love, whether it be your sport or in the weight room or studying for classes. Because I mean, the biggest thing for me is being here. I'm not the one paying for my school,
Mm.
and so lacking in areas that affect my scholarship and things like that. It's disrespectful to your parents. You're supposed to honor your parents. And so that's one thing that clicked for me was, you put in the work to honor them because they made a big sacrifice to put you in the school. Um, and it's the same thing with like your body and your coaches. You're supposed to honor, people who are above you. You show respect. And by not doing the things that you're told to do the best way you can, you're being disrespectful, essentially. Um, so it's all intertwined, um, some way or another. And I feel like the biggest thing for me is just, understanding how God calls us to live our lives and trying our best to apply that to the areas of our life that, aren't directly talked about in the Bible, but the way God tells us to act can be easily applicable to the way that you live your life.
How hard have you found that to be, or what kind of challenges have you had to face as a young adult who's playing Division I sports, trying to live out that Christian journey, when we know all too well that there's a big bulk of the world that is completely opposed to it? What challenges have you feel like you've faced so far, and what advice would you give to a young athlete that's taking that next step into the college game to, hold fast to their faith um, and continue to pursue that with excellence amidst possibly some major distractions?
It's difficult. It was weird coming from Woodlands Christian where, everybody had similar beliefs, whether they showed it or not. You're in a Christian private school with Bible class, and you have coaches who are believers and instill that in practice in the way that they, coach you. And then coming here to realize, there's somebody on the team who's an atheist, or um, it's still Texas Christian University, but as much as they will say it or not say it, there's always going to be people who don't believe what you believe, and there's going to be clash with that. And it's difficult whenever you see um, guys that are on your team you're hanging out with all day, and it's just very different lifestyles, on weekends, and waking up for church versus not waking up for church, and things of that nature. And what I will say is nobody can make you do anything. And somebody older and wiser than me said that if you're doing things the right way, you're going to have problems. And if you're not doing things the right way, people are going to let you slide because you agree with them.
Mm.
And I think that that's something that I don't know. Maybe it made me think about the way that I want to live my life and the people that I care about the way they live their life. So I think that it's important to surround yourself with people who want to be want to end up in the same area you want to end up. And my dad always told me you're like who you surround yourself with. So it's important to have the right circle, but also not be ashamed of what you believe in, and understanding how God has blessed you up to this point, and He's going to continue to bless you if you continue to live your life in the right way, and honor Him. So it hasn't been difficult for me just because of how it was growing up. Um, but for others who are maybe new to them and they don't understand necessarily the ins and outs of it and how to react to certain news or certain things that are happening in their lives, it may be difficult. But I think it's important to find yourself back in the Word, or even if it's your Bible app on your phone, whatever it is, you got to be able to find yourself going to look for answers, um, in the Word, instead of looking it up on Google, or asking somebody who doesn't believe in the same things or have the best interest in mind for you.
Well, before we move to coaches and potentially allow you to give us some advice from the perspective of an athlete, which I think is extremely healthy and something we as coaches need to hear. What is maybe a final piece of advice to an athlete, or let's say you were advising yourself? Put yourself back into, you just turned 16. Um, that maybe the gears are shifting from, oh man, this is just something I thought I was good at, to no, man, I'm actually really good at this. I need to pursue this with a little bit more intentionality. What is one piece of advice you would give yourself as a 16-year-old that you would go back and do totally different?
Hmm. I don't know if there's anything I would do necessarily different. Um, but it's more of, it was a time in my life where I didn't know what sports was going to be for me after high school. Like I said, I hadn't hit that growth spurt. I was still just having fun with it. I was naturally gifted, but not um, physically gifted to that point. Um, so I think that it's important to just have fun with it as long as you can. Because the quicker that you make it, about a business, or if you don't do good, your life's over. The quicker you just lose the love of the game. And I think it was important for me to just always just enjoy it more than it was being hard on myself for my results. Um, so I would just say telling myself that is something that I did, and I'm glad I did it. But there's not really a whole lot of things I would tell myself um, that I would want to change.
Well, hey, man, as we move to coaches and parents, those are our other two platforms in our groups or audiences that we address here at B3rd Athletics. This past week in our B3rd Journey to Becoming Third curriculum that we have for high school athletes, we were talking about humility, and this passage, 1 Peter 5, came up on our New Testament day. And I thought it would be a good transition. And my hope in reading this real quick, if you'll indulge, is to give Caedmon a little bit of confidence to, um, allow the Holy Spirit to kind of look into his heart and say, "Hey, man, this is the advice I would give coaches, because coaches, we need to grow too. Parents, we need to grow." So let's just take a real quick look here at 1 Peter 5, and this is going to be verses 1 through 6. And it says this: "To the elders among you, I appeal as a fellow elder and a witness of Christ's sufferings, who also share in the glory to be revealed. Be shepherds of God's flock that is under your care, watching over them, not because you must, but because you are willing, as God wants you to be. Not pursuing dishonest gain, but eager to serve, not lording it over those entrusted to you, but being examples to the flock. And when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the crown of glory that will never fade away. In the same way, you who are younger, submit yourselves to your elders. All of you, clothe yourselves with humility toward one another, because God opposes the proud, but shows favor to the humble. Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time." I think in every stage of life, I teach this, I encourage this. I think it's a biblical principle. I mean, I'm an elder now at 41 years old, a little differently than I was when I was in college, but I think in a certain way, Caedmon, you're an elder right now. You got people younger than you that are looking to you. You also have some life experiences that could benefit me. And so I think in this passage, Christ is speaking to a lot of us from both scenarios. And so the challenge is, in every stage of life, want to be coached, and then, coach somebody else, because when you coach somebody else, you learn things in a different way. So right now we're talking about coaches. In your experience as a college athlete, as somebody who's pursuing excellence in baseball, what is some advice you would give to coaches for us to maybe do a better job on our end? I mean, I'm just going to make it a broad statement, and then if I want to narrow it down, I'm going to do that. But what advice would you give us coaches?
Um, I mean, I think first of all, I haven't really had any fair share of bad coaches. I think that's one thing that I was blessed with, and it was never really about coaching for me. For some reason, I always viewed like being told if I done something wrong, on the court or on the field, that correction to me felt more like a life lesson and like you need to fix this internally more than you need to fix the way you do this athletically. I don't know why, but that's just kind of the way that I took things. And for me, especially with you and Jason, at least, it was always just like toughness and grit more than it was have a better jump shot or dribble better or pass better. And maybe that was just the way that y'all tried to do it, or maybe it was just the way I interpreted it. But that's just kind of the way I took things. I think the only thing that comes to mind is one thing that at least I've seen in other places is coaches love to coach the same way for every single player and coach across the board the exact same way, which I think is hard to do because we're all different. We all have different backgrounds. We all react to things differently. And so I think it's hard. It's probably harder at the college level than it is high school level because you have a new wave of student athletes coming in every year. So it's harder, to get to know them down to their core. But I think just trying to understand your players and like what makes them tick, what gets through to their head, what doesn't, and being able to coach individually more than using the same criteria for all, 40 athletes or whatever it may be. So.
Yeah, I would almost imagine that, Jesus had his 12 closest apostles, disciples. I would imagine he coached every one of them differently, because at the end of the day, we're different human beings. I mean, the way that we were created, like you said, the backgrounds that we have. And to be honest with you, if a coach is listening to this, here's from my own experience. I've always felt like I've gotten the most out of my athletes when they fully believe that I care about who they're going to be long term. I mean, yes, we want them to become the best version of them as an athlete. But if my high school athletes, or if you're a college coach, if your college athletes truly believe that you care deeply about who they're going to be at 40, they're going to play differently for you. And that stretches beyond sports. If you're running a business, do the people that you lead know that you want the best for them and their family? And I see that as like, are you using them for the gain of the organization? Or does the organization also exist to help the individual person? Because I think when we help the individual person grow across the board, the organization grows. I mean, what about like even just a specific scenario? Maybe if it's let's talk to high school coaches specifically right now. You're working with a recruitable athlete. Um, how could they maybe do a better job opening a few more doors? Because I think some coaches are really good at it. Some coaches are not. I mean, what would your advice be now that you've been in the college game? Like, hey, I mean, you had a great one, but like not everybody benefits to that. I mean, what do you think high school coaches could be doing to better prepare athletes to make that leap?
I mean, I think it's more connections than anything, and it helped that at Woodlands Christian, Coach Cleveland, who played at Mississippi State, and had Aaron Hill on staff who played professionally. It's connections and knowing people. It might have been it could have been one of his teammates that he maybe didn't like very much, but continued to have respect for, and they kept in touch. And next thing you know, his teammate who didn't really like is the head coach at Texas Tech or Baylor or somewhere who is looking for a recruit, and Coach Cleveland is like, hey, I got this kid, we've kept in touch. I think this guy would fit great for your program. Next thing you know, the kid wants to play there. And it's just, I think it's connections more than anything. One thing that I learned is never burn bridges. And that's something that, my dad told me. And you never know whenever you cross a bridge, if that part of the island starts to go down, you're going to need a way back. But if you already burned that bridge due to, a bad experience or just a bad taste in your mouth, it's more an ego thing than anything. It's just being able to, not even an ego thing. I don't really know how to explain it, but I think it's more of it's just the connections. I think that the players they're going to be good. They're going to play. They're going to want to play the way they want to play. And they're going to be good at what they're naturally good at because they're going to work at what they're naturally good at. At least that's what it was for me. Just because you're going to work at what you're already good at because you want to be better at it. You're not going to try to learn a new skill just to be, half as good at it as what you're already really good at. So I think that the coaches maybe could also model, like a high school practice based on like a college practice and kind of give their guys a sense of what it's going to be like, if they do decide to go play, at the next level. And all colleges are different. I'm not saying that you got to incorporate something from every college practice into your practice. But I feel like most college practices are ran pretty similar. I feel like ours at Woodlands Christian was pretty similar to kind of how it is at TCU now. But just kind of giving a taste of what that next level is going to look like with it, just preparing the right way.
Yeah, I liked the idea about don't burn bridges. I think it's easy sometimes to let our competitive nature boil over and fracture a relationship that never needed to be fractured in the first place. And if we have a B3rd mindset, like if the reason we do things is to love God with our whole heart, soul, mind, and strength first, and then really to put our neighbor above ourselves as a coach, that really should be your athletes, and I'm going to seek to not burn bridges because I want to have as many doors of opportunity for my athletes as humanly possible. And that could be a fellow high school coach. That could be a college coach. Like, how do I build as many bridges as possible so that when the time comes and I have an athlete that wants to make that next leap, I can do that. One of the things we didn't touch on that I want to touch on, and maybe this is a good transition into parents, because I think parents often struggle with this as much as the athlete. And so we'll use it as a transition, whether it is or not. But a lot of student athletes, a lot of parents they're trapped with this. What do they call it? They're level driven. It's D1 or bust. One of the things Coach Cleveland and the baseball program at Woodlands Christian has taught me is how amazing the junior college baseball programs are to help kids to that next level. And so how would you give advice to a young person? And I know some of them are going to go, or a family, they're going to go, well, yeah, that's easy for you to say. You're at a Power 5 school, you're at TCU, but you've also been around a lot of baseball. How do you encourage a family going through the process to keep all of their options open and not be level driven?
I mean, I think first off, you have to realize that, an accomplishment's an accomplishment, regardless of how others will view it. And I think if you allow yourself to be perceived as somebody that cares what others think more than what you care about it for your own child, then that's ultimately up to you in the way that you handle that. But I think that playing a college sport at any level is an accomplishment in itself. And yeah, like I'm here, but it's not because of I disregarded, any other level, whether it be D2, D3, JUCO, NAIA. If that's where my only opportunity was to play the sport I love at the next level, that's what I would have done. But I obviously got a different plan for me in my life. My younger brother just committed to a junior college, and I told him that's the best thing that he could have done because we have different personalities, and he likes the grind and he wants to get as best he can under tough circumstances, because the only thing that's going to bring is a positive way out for him from the junior college to a Division I. And then the only thing that's going to bring is professional baseball, if that's the route he wants to go and the route that God calls him to go. So I don't think that, junior college or anything less than D1 is negative by any means. Now, if you're thinking that for football, at least if you're thinking that you got to play at a Power 5 because you want to be on TV and those are the only guys that get drafted to go play in the NFL, sure, maybe. But at the same time, you also have to understand that nobody's going to over recruit somebody if they don't actually think they're that good. So coaches aren't going to, offer you a full ride to a Division I school if they don't think that you're going to succeed there. I think it's best to go where you can play, immediately. And it's also good to go to a place that you feel there's a mutual respect between you and the coaching staff, because it's more about the person you become more than the baseball player you become. And the school ultimately you choose leads up to that. So TCU being the school that has, the religious aspect of it, being the Christian I am, I enjoy having the Christian in the name, but also the mandatory religious class, and the FCAs once a week, the Bible studies once a week. There's opportunities for that, but also just a great academic setting as well. And obviously the sports at TCU are really, really good. So it's all an individual decision on how you want to get better as a human being, more than it is choosing a D1 that's going to make you miserable because you don't play, rather than going to a JUCO that's going to shape and mold you into a better human being.
Well, one of the things I always liked about watching the encounter you had with your parents is I feel like they probably pushed you at times. Obviously, I'm outside looking in. I would often hear your dad tell you, I love to watch you play. Um, what advice would you give parents to a young athlete? Let's say they're in middle school and they're really good, but they're getting started. Like, how would you encourage a parent like to push their kids in the right way, but also release them to the game so that they can, kind of have the freedom to express themselves within the sport or let their failures happen and live through that? What advice would you give us parents that got young athletes coming up?
I would say for me, we lived in East Texas, for a few years growing up. And at that time I was big into basketball. And it was a different type of basketball than what it was in the Woodlands. Over in East Texas, it was a lot harder. I was a soft kid, honestly. And I played basketball because I liked it. And I told my dad every day after practice I wanted to quit because I couldn't do it. And every day we'd have the same conversation. He was like, "Man, you're gonna have to get tougher one way or another." And at the time, I hated him for it because I wanted to just go play basketball and enjoy it and be the best there was, just because I'd rather be good than struggle. And that's how it was the time being in middle school. But what I didn't realize is how it was going to shape and mold me for those tough situations as I continued, through my journey. And the thing that I love the most, my parents did just the best job, is it was only encouragement. And there was never really, like, for me, I never felt like I had to do good or I wouldn't get dinner. And I feel like a lot of times, at least in movies, you see like parents like forcing their kids to do all this extra stuff because they want their kid to have some record or whatever it may be. And that's not at all how my parents were. And I appreciate that out of them more than they probably realized, but they always just allowed it to be a game. And they understood that it was going to take work, and they pushed me at the right times and in the right areas. But again, it was more for just growth as a human being more than it was, throwing harder or running faster. So, for parents who have a kid in middle school, I would just say the best thing is just encourage your kid. And when they do something wrong, I'm not saying ignore it, but just let the kid have fun. That's the only way they're going to learn. And you have to be able to trust the coaches that are coaching every other kid on that team. Is the coaches are there for a reason. And if you wanted to coach, then you should just start your own team and coach your kid and all the other teammates. And so if you're going to be a parent, sit on the sideline and just cheer on your kid. Don't yell at them, because it's just going to make the kid more upset and hate the sport. And there's a reason that I played 3 sports all the way through high school, is because my parents sat on the sideline and they cheered me on. And after the game, they would tell me I did a great job. And then we would talk about things I did wrong in a healthy way. Not that I had to feel bad for doing something wrong, because they weren't the coach. If I did something wrong, the coach was going to tell me. So it was more just encouragement and keep having fun with it. It was always just more fun and enjoyable than it was going home and feeling scared that my parents are going to be mad at me for how I played.
Yeah. I love that. But definitely one of the things I heard you say, I like the part where you're in East Texas and you're coming home from tough practices, and it's, there are going to be some moments in a young athlete's life that aren't always the most fun. And too often, I think right now in our current sports world and really just life in general, we see people run from those like, oh, it's challenging, it must not be right. I love the fact that your dad kind of kept encouraging you but kept you in those difficult moments because he knew like, hey, this is going to be good for you. Like over the course of the entirety of your life, you're going to draw from these moments. And that's why I'm here. Like I'm going to pick you up. And when you've had a tough practice, I'm going to encourage you and I'm going to tell you, hey, look, it's, you're doing great. Like this is right where God wants you to be. And then it gets you to the moments that are fun where you get to compete and you've endured the sandpaper so that you can get better and you can become one of the star players. And so I think that is phenomenal advice. Well, I mean, look, dude, I think you knocked it out of the park. I'm just kind of curious if you got anything, that's on your heart that you're like, man, I kind of want to share this. Is there anything left that you might want to share with our audience today?
I mean, nothing specific or anything like that. I mean, I'm really grateful that you asked me to be on here. I feel
Okay.
like I've enjoyed whether that, I can't see them face to face right now, but hopefully, what I have said has at least affected or made you think, about the way you do things. Because it's people like Coach Field, it's people like my parents and people like my other mentors and coaches that have said things to me that have affected the way, I've looked at practice, whether it be um, having having to do something versus getting to do something, being eager versus being willing, whatever it may be, it's all a mindset thing. And so I wanted to do this because I felt like there's things that, I've learned over the last couple of years, just through, TCU baseball, but also the 15-month rehab process I have with my elbow. So there's just things that I've found and developed more recently over the last couple of years. And I'm glad I was able to be on here. It was a lot of fun.
Well, before we let you go, I mean, what a failure on my part. I mean, Caedmon has been through the ringer over the last 12 months. He finally gets to where he wants to go and he has to have Tommy John surgery. I'm sure there were some really low moments at that point where you're going through an experience that a lot of people end up facing and you're looking at God and you're going, all right, reveal yourself to me in this because I'm not understanding this. Um, as we close today, talk about that journey just a little bit on, maybe how did your faith at the end of the day get you through the hard times, even though you might have had some of those moments where you're like, God, I don't know about this, like what are we doing here? But tell us how has that experience been? How are you feeling health wise, getting ready for the upcoming season? And maybe for somebody else that's going through a tough injury or a tough time in life, you can provide for them a level of hope that if they just continue to put God first, things will get better in their life, and that sometimes the cross He's asking them to carry is a part of their journey and not a punishment.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I'm going to start all the way back in high school. So my senior year, it was kind of, I mean, I had been doing really well. There was some attention, kind of just around me and my abilities, and it was what it was. But I remember the first thing that happened that kind of really changed, like the mental side of all of it, and all just like the hype and craziness around it was we had played Bay Area, and I'd had a really good game on the mound, and I'd gone home and I was kind of just sitting in bed thinking about the game, and all of a sudden, like I felt like this force kind of like pushed my phone down onto my chest, and I was sitting there eyes wide open, but they felt closed. And in the moment, it felt like it was a vision, is what it was. But it was one of the craziest like mental experiences I've ever had. And my eyes are wide open, but I feel asleep. I'm in the middle of this desert, and there's two roads. And at the time of my life, I'd really been struggling with trying to decide if I was going to take this new step and get drafted and go try to play professional baseball at high school, or if I was going to go play, at TCU, the place I always wanted to end up at. And in this dream, this vision that I had, I was in a desert and there were two roads. I was kind of at a fork in a road, and the road on the left was like a cross, and the road itself looked more dirty and like beat up. But there was a cross in my vision of the road, and there was kind of like a glowing figure standing next to it. There wasn't like a genuine figure there, but it wasn't just a light. It was kind of like a glowing figure. And on the other side of the road, the other road to the right was this, almost like, the way I talk about it is more like Times Square. Super well kept, very good painted streets and everything. And there was just billboards all over the side, glowing big bright lights, made it look super, super great. And on those billboards was like the logo of every MLB team. And I remember staying at that fork in the road and looking down both roads and seeing both of those images. And in the vision, I took a step down the right path, not like the right path towards like, all of them will be logo on the billboards. And the second my foot touched the ground, everything went black and white. And I saw a bunch of, in the distance, like snakes almost like slithering towards me. And then like I had snapped out of it. And for me, that was to that moment, the biggest thing in my life that affected my faith. And I remember just breaking down in tears, sitting there just like not knowing kind of what that meant or what I was supposed to think of it. And I don't necessarily think that it was a choose your faith or choose professional baseball type of thing. But I think it was where I had to really sit down and just analyze kind of where I was going with my life. And you can do both. You can have your faith and play professional baseball. And so to this day, I haven't fully discovered what that meant. But that was it was a really crazy thing. And I remember how much it affected me like the next week and the following couple games after that. But I ended up pulling my name out of the draft and showed up to campus. And I think that it might have just been a lack of me not understanding pitching enough to that point. But I had some elbow problems in the fall, and I was told that, it was no structural damage. We were okay. We were just going to take 8 weeks off. So I took 8 weeks off and came back in the spring, made a few starts. And then right before the conference tournament, I was throwing a bullpen, getting prepared for that. And my elbow just was in a ton of pain. There was no pop or anything like that. But it was just in just sharp pain. My fingers were numb. And I knew something was wrong. So I ended up finding out that my elbow was torn and had to get surgery. I guess it would have been after the regional. So it was June 13th of 2022. And post-surgery, had a couple weeks in a really, really dark place. I've always been a very positive person, and I've never really had, dark moments and, questioned anything necessarily. But I tell you what, Satan finds himself really eating at you in those moments of sadness and darkness and just being alone. And it was serious. I didn't even tell anybody about it, honestly, just because I felt like I could hide it really, really well. And it was dark. It was tough. But I remember scrolling on social media and seeing one thing that kind of changed the way I started to look at things. And it was, sometimes you got to find rock bottom to realize Jesus was waiting for you at rock bottom. And, up to that point, it was a lot of fear of, are you ever going to get back to what you were? Are you ever going to be able to prove people who doubted you wrong? And it was just a mental battle going back and forth and back and forth. And it was all being fed to me, from Satan himself. And it was unhealthy and it was bad. But that's kind of when I realized that I wanted to take it to the next level, and I wanted to shine for all the right reasons. And it wasn't, I'm going to do it for myself, or I'm going to do it, for anybody who is hating on me or saying I can't do it. I'm just going to do it for myself. And I'm just going to prove to everybody else that, yeah, I went down, but I'm going to come back swinging. So it was rehab for 13, 14 months and worked through all of it well. And every time, I tried to just attack it as hard as I could, just because I knew how much it was going to help me. And I feel like, honestly, coming out of it, I'm stronger mentally than my arm is stronger. I feel like it was the hardest mental thing, having to watch all my teammates. I didn't get to play all my sophomore year, so I redshirted. So it was, attacking school, and I had the best GPA that I'd had to that point, and didn't get to play, but it was hard watching my teammates get to play, and not understanding, why this happened to me and why I had to miss on, a big year. We ended up going to Omaha, and didn't get to have any part of that, but I felt that, I could be the best teammate that I could. So, I tried to be encouraging and stay positive as much as I could, but I did get to go with the team to Omaha. It was a lot of fun. Even though I wish I would have gotten to throw. But I do believe that, that God does things for a reason, and I have no idea, why it happened, or, what he's going to do through me, or through me to others because of it. But that's the point of, waking up every day and having, a positive attitude and continue to work hard, is because you don't know what's coming, or what God's got planned for you. But
Yeah, I think those are some of the hard things about life is and when you're in those low moments, the last thing you want to hear is, "Hey, God has a plan." I mean, I, maybe that's consolation for some, but I think that that's a challenging thing to hear, but it is a reality. I mean, God really does have a plan for our life, and it doesn't mean that it's going to be all peaches and cream. I mean, he tells us to come follow him. He asks us to pick up our cross. And my wife has always said this about the famous Garth Brooks song, Unanswered Prayers. She's like, that's a dumb song. God doesn't, he doesn't not answer prayers. He just sometimes says no, or not right now, or not yet. And so, Caedmon, I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on. And like we said, we're praying for you. Wish you the best of luck.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, Tanner.
All right. God bless. Hey, I hope that you enjoyed this podcast today with Caedmon Parker. If you did, please subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, share us with your friends, and pray for B3rd Athletics that we can continue to do the Lord's work in and through sports. God bless.